Good evening. Call the Davidson County Board of Commissioners meeting for Monday, June 26th to order. We sure do appreciate you folks coming. Appreciate your desire to participate in county government. We also want to thank all the folks that might be listening on their TV or tuning into that. We'd like to appreciate them as well. I'm going to lead the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Before we start this, when we do the Pledge of Allegiance, there's a flag back there and a flag up here. And we just didn't want to turn our backs on y'all when we say the pledge, so we put one each, and you can do each one, either one. Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for all of the blessings that you have given to us as a nation, a county, a state.
Yes, Lord.
And individually. We thank you, Lord, for the promises that you give us in your word. We thank you for the one that says if we lack wisdom in any particular thing that we're contemplating, that what we can do is to ask you for direction. And that's what we do, Lord. We would pray that everything that we would, every decision that we would make would be according to your will. Those that are here to testify before this board, we ask that you would give them calmness in their presentation and help us, this board, in the decisions that we make. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Shores, you want to recognize our veterans?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have started a tradition here at Davidson County, and we like to start our meetings off by recognizing any veterans that may be here tonight. So if we have any veterans, would you please stand and be recognized? Fantastic. If you do not have one of the Davidson County veteran pins, would you please come up and let me give you one? Fantastic. Thank you for your service.
Appreciate you, bro. Yes, sir.
Appreciate your service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Surely. Is Dr. Emily Life here? She was supposed to be the representative for the Lexington Area Chamber of Commerce, and we're sorry she was not be able to make it.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Hal Root is here. Back there with the chamber, Lexington Chamber.
Oh, well, his name's not spelled L-A-P-E. And that's who I had on there as a representative. You can depend upon Hal. He's here every time we have a meeting, and we appreciate his faithfulness in attending. Need to excuse a couple of commissioners, Mizell and Yates, unable to be with us this evening. Can I have a motion and second to excuse them? We'll do this verbally.
So moved, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we excuse Commissioner Mizell and Commissioner Yates.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed likewise. If you want to speak at the public address time, you need to register up here. If you haven't already done, we'll give you some time. You can go ahead and register. The agenda that you have before you, Mr. Smith has asked that approval of the SCIF grant extension be added to the agenda as agenda item 9F. Requested that the closed session be removed. Are there any other changes for the agenda? Did you have another one?
No, sir.
About the tax thing?
No, we don't need anything for that. I
Okay.
was talking to everybody, so we got it straight.
Okay.
Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the amended agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Cast your vote. Is there anyone registered to speak?
Mr. Chairman, that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Hal Roos.
I'm Hal Roof. I think most of you know me by now. I'm not a public speaker. I'm here to thank each and every one of you for what you do for our county. Fred and I are old enough and gray enough to remember we, as a veteran, wasn't appreciated. I was in the National Guard in Greensboro from 71 to 77, so right duty 2 times a year, all 6 years. Sped on a number of times. They had us at Fort Bragg one summer camp, and they pulled us and took us to Raleigh. Spent a week there. So when y'all recognized the veterans the other night I was here, I didn't know what to say. And again, it took something like 9/11 to make us appreciate our veterans. I'll never forget that morning at work. I worked at TI Industries for 36 years. Worked with your dad for a few years. And I became appreciative of politics because of Joe Hagee. He worked a full-time job, and we go to Raleigh. And it takes a special person, different times. I thank you. I've been on the Davidson Workforce Board since probably 2010. Billy Joe Capley had an article in the paper, the Dispatch, which I still take, and they was wanting volunteers. And our company I worked with for 36 years had gone out of business, and I said I want to help people that's looking for a job find a job, and companies. I was putting 20 people work a week and couldn't find enough people. And so I thought I could be the in-between, connecting the dots. So thank y'all for what you do, and thank you for the honor of me being on that board. It was a great board. Wish we could continue the board some way or another, because we had the superintendents of schools, the president of the community college, we had the industry, and that's when you're looking for people, I even started looking at elementary school, start planning. Mm-hmm. Thank y'all, appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Al. David Massingale. You hesitated. Did I make a mess of your name?
No, it's just one of those names. I really just have questions, and it might be out of turn, because what I'm here is about is the zoning for the solar farm right next to me.
We're gonna have a public, well, no, we won't. I think that's being continued.
No,
Yes,
sir,
that
was,
will be heard.
it will be.
Huh?
We will hear that tonight, yes.
I just have 2 questions. Number 8, 25643 Highway 8. And it's my understanding it's gonna be right up on my property.
Right.
My 2 questions are, if they build too close to my property and say we have a storm and one of my trees falls on that, does that make me liable for it? The next question is, my wife looked online and says my property value is gonna drop by 1.5%. And if it drops, is Davidson County gonna drop my property tax 1.5%? And that don't sound like a lot, but on $100,000, that's $1,500 a year. That's a lot to me.
Yeah. I think it's a lot to all of us.
I mean, yeah, that's gas enough for me to get back and forth. And, here and there money. I just 2 questions, all I had.
Have you, by any chance, contacted an appraiser for property in this county and asked their opinion as to whether or not that solar farm is gonna adversely impact your property?
No, we got this thing in the mail about questions here, and I thought this would be the place to come.
It is. You're fine. So far as your liability of a tree falling on somebody else's property, you need to check with your insurance. If the tree is a good live tree and it falls, you're not responsible. If it's dead and it falls, you would be.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question. Would this gentleman would this not be better to be discussed in the public hearing to be entered in, I guess, in the official discussion of that zoning request?
Yeah, we're gonna open it
Okay.
whenever we get to it. He'd asked pretty much two
But he
direct
can
questions.
speak then. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay.
That's when you officially speak on that
Okay,
matter.
well, like I say, I didn't know. I seen this and I needed to come up here.
You can speak to the chairman, he runs the show. Yeah. If he's gonna talk to you, talk to him.
All right, thank
Back
you.
at a different time, or?
Yeah, well, it'll be,
Just a
next
few
one on the
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay.
Yeah,
One
tonight.
quick question. Did you eat all that banana split?
You know, if I hadn't had my supper, I could've ate that. That was a beginner banana split. I mean, that's.
You can finish that?
Oh, I could've ate that.
See, listen.
But I ate my
He needs a
plate
proclamation then.
and
Then we-
her plate. Hey, I'm like a tick when it comes to ice cream. I buzz. I'll go back and wait my turn then.
All right, you're fine. You're fine. We have a public hearing for rezoning request by Alex McGee and Charles McDowell in Emmons Township.
Like that purple.
All right, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We do have that on the agenda tonight. Due to some complications at the planning board level, we would ask that we continue that request to to your regularly scheduled, I think it's August 28th, commissioners meeting, and we'll hear it at that time. So if I could get a motion to continue it, if it's the board's wishes, to continue it to August 28th.
Is that a compliance extension?
Yes, it is. It is. There was issues with that. They had a violation of the zoning regulations, and they've agreed to fix the violation. We've given them 2 months to comply with that, and then when they come back, we'll hear it at that point in time.
Do I have a motion and a second to,
Motion to continue to the August, what,
28.
28th meeting?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
We're clicking this.
any discussion? Cast your vote. A request for a special use permit Class A by Davidson County NC S1 LLC in Allegheny Hill Township.
And Mr. Chairman, that last motion carried by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to read the legal, and then we'll swear everyone in that wants to speak, and then you can open the public hearing. Request by Davidson County NC S1 LLC for a special use permit Class A to construct and operate a solar farm in an RA2 rural agricultural district. Property is located on the east side of North Carolina Highway 8, approximately 1,900 feet north of the North Carolina 8 and North Carolina 49 intersection. Property is further described as Allegheny Township, tax map 12, a portion of lot 17 containing 43 acres more or less.
Okay, I declare the, public hearing open.
You probably need to swear everyone who wishes to speak in.
Everybody needs to be sworn
Yeah,
in.
this is a quasi-judicial request, so it's different rules of evidence.
Anyone wishing to speak either in favor of or against, please come forward, be sworn in.
Yeah. Yes, or affirmed, however you want to do it. Left hand on the Bible and raise your right, please.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give to the board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you very much.
We'll have a seat in the front row. We'll get right to you.
You gonna give us instructions on the
Yes, sir, Mr.
on
Chair.
that thing?
Yes, sir. Quasi-judicial, it's a tongue twister. Quasi-judicial, hearing tonight where we have to have sworn evidence and only people that have standing. I mean, the board can entertain any comments, but it's the board's responsibility to weigh layman comment as opposed to expert comment and people with standing, normally meaning people that do have adjoining property. So, instead of going into a lot of detail, I'm gonna, ask the representative of the applicant, I think Mr. John Kelly, is that correct? Okay, Mr. John Kelly to, come up and introduce the application and go through what they need, and put evidence on for this request, and then, staff will be available for comment.
You want to come forward?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is requesting a rezoning for the existing property. We're requesting a special use permit for a proposed solar farm. There will be a 30-foot buffer that extends around the outer boundary of the site. I know there was a gentleman here with a concern about the tree on the adjacent property. There will be a buffer around the exterior of the property, so a tree falling, and it would be unlikely that it would affect any of the proposed actual development of the site. We also have a land appraiser here to discuss how the proposed development will impact the surrounding properties. His name is Nick Kirkland, and he can also come up and speak to how the proposed development will affect the surrounding properties. And I can have him come up at this time to speak to those, and then after that, we can answer any questions that the board may have. I myself, work for Kimley Horn. We're a consulting engineer out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And we also have with me Chris Tinklenberg, who's our environmental specialist, who can discuss anything regarding streams, wetlands, or historical items on the property. So,
Okay.
at this time, the chairman.
It's a good time.
Okay, I will have.
Are there any questions by the board? Any questions? No questions?
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, I'll have the appraiser come up and he can discuss his findings.
Hi, my name is Nick Kirkland with Kirkland Appraisals. I'm a state certified general appraiser in the state of North Carolina, as well as the Commonwealth of Virginia. I've been accepted as an expert in property value impacts hundreds of times in hearings just like this, including before this board regarding property value impacts in the past. So what we've done is we've had an impact study that we've worked up to answer and find out whether or not this proposed solar farm would have an impact on the adjoining property values, positive or negative. To that end, we've found homes that have sold adjacent to solar farms like the proposed one, and found that homes that sell next to solar farms typically sell for about the same price as homes that are, when you compare the home next to the solar farm to similar nearby homes, the ones next to the solar farms are selling for about the same price. There's a range of impacts for being adjacent to a solar farm that we've measured across 90 different examples of such homes next to solar farms versus homes not next to solar farms. And this is a range of negative 10%, so an impact, up to positive 10% or a positive impact. But the overall average and median of that data is positive 1%, which is a strong indication of no impact to the adjoining property values. There have been several university studies that have been completed that similarly show no significant impact to adjoining property values, specifically for residential dwellings in rural areas like this. I'm happy to go through the impact study. It's a big document, but at least to discuss with the concerns that were previously brought up, the proposed development will not have an impact on the adjoining property values. And it's my professional opinion to that fact that it won't impact the adjoining property values. And furthermore, it's my professional opinion that the proposed development will be in harmony in the area in which it's to be located. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about that. That's the quick presentation.
The board have any questions on the value of the property?
I have one, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay. So just to confirm what you said, there's a plus or minus 10%,
From the data set that we have pulled, yes.
but on average, you said it's typically positive 1%?
What we've measured is that essentially the range is from negative 10% to positive 10%, but almost all of the data, like 2 standard deviations, is within 0% and positive 5%. But when talking about the overall average of all the 90-plus examples, it falls at positive 1%, which is a really strong indication of no impact to the adjoining property values.
And were these examples done in Davidson County or in North Carolina?
We do have data from Davidson County that we have explicitly looked for. I'm going to have to look in the report if you want me to know, if I can say, I do not know if we have any of those examples explicitly from Davidson County, but when we work up the studies, we do actively look for them. So if we don't have them, it's because we weren't able to find any. And really the trick with that is just take any given one piece of farmland and hope that there's been a recent sale of a home next to it. It's difficult to find, but it is something that we actively look for, and we have the majority of the data that we found is within North Carolina, specifically in the Piedmont to coastal region. So most of this data is as local as you can hope to get it. But if you were curious if we have any of those match pairs from Davidson County, I can quickly look through the report to let you know.
I don't want to postpone anything, but if you could look at it and just kind of give us a thumbs up or tell one of these other fellows or something, that'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
How many solar farms are up and running in Davidson County?
That is a good question. Let me see.
It's my understanding there are 2 now. The Harris Farm, I think, is under construction or is near completion, plus the Sun Edison track, which is out off of Jersey Church Road.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
They are operational and selling electricity?
I know the Sun Edison is. I know that the approval we gave for the Harris property was under construction. I rode out there to look at that before the South Davidson solar application because I wanted to make sure that they had broken ground, and they have. I don't know if it's complete yet or not.
So have you done a study on those parcels?
We have looked at all the solar farms within Davidson County looking for sales next to them. Yeah, well, while there are 2 that have broken ground or are operational, I mean, I know personally I've provided testimony for more than that for proposed ones. So we have looked at more than just 2 in Davidson County, though not all of them may have been completed as of yet. But on that note, one other thing that may help the adjoining property owner is we've actually reached out to all the tax assessors in North Carolina who have solar farms within their jurisdictions in those counties, including Davidson County, to ask if they make any changes to the adjoining property values for being adjacent to a solar farm. And none of the assessors that we have talked to have changed any of the neighbors' property values up or down, including Davidson County. So we have reached out. And the main reason for that when we've asked why you haven't is they don't have a reason or a basis to do so.
Any other questions?
I do. I don't know whether to ask you this or not. Taking a look at the property itself and knowing that you had a 30-foot buffer, 30 feet on all sides, is that correct? Okay. And so if we were looking down at this property, to look down, so you're going to have a tree line. Is it going to be a tree line around that in that 30 feet, right?
It would be best to let one of them answer. I'm not the expert for that.
He's shaking his head. So.
Would you like me to step aside so he can come up to answer your question?
He might.
That's
have.
fine.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. There's a tree plan that's in the bottom right detail there.
Can you
shows
mention
that tree buffer?
State your name for the
I'm
record,
sorry,
please.
Chris Tinklenberg with Kimley Horn.
I'm sorry.
Chris Tinklenberg.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and there's a
There's a
landscape
diagram
plan
of the
there in
plantings
corner.
for the buffer
Okay.
that's supposed to go around the entirety of the property. One of our specific standards, Commissioner Watford, is that the active solar system shall be screened from routine view from public right-of-ways or adjacent residentially owned properties. Hence, that requires this screening and the buffer.
So from his property, the gentleman that spoke before, and from the road property side, people are not going to be able to see see them?
At maturity, when you have a mix of your
At
canopy and
maturity,
yep,
yes.
and your understory trees, yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all. I like to think about the visual,
Sure,
you know.
So would you be the environmental guy? Okay. And I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Chris Tinklenberg. Chris.
Okay. So Chris, I see to the north, I'm assuming this is correct, Lee, to the north of the picture, not this picture, but, I don't know, I think it's my page 6 of the packet. I guess it gives a depiction of the array and the way it looks.
Mm-hmm.
That you're referring to this?
Yes,
Yes.
perfect.
Yep.
There's two, it looks like pretty decent sized ponds.
Sure.
Nothing in this, there's no runoff or anything that could ever get to those ponds or do anything to degrade those ponds?
No, sir, the natural drainage for those ponds, if you can see on the aerial there, everything's draining to the west. And the rest of the site, there's a ridge line, just south of those ponds, and so all of the runoff from our site will be captured on site and discharged, John Kelly, to the south, I believe. I don't have the contour and vision in my head, but all of that runoff will be captured and drained to the south.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions, Board? Thank you, sir.
May I ask him a question?
Mm-hmm.
Will you folks be getting an erosion control plan from DEQ upon development?
Yes, sir.
That could potentially speak to the public health, safety, and general welfare with respect to keeping sedimentation and erosion control measures in place so that what you're alluding to does not happen.
Thank you, Lee.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You have someone else to present, would you want to, sir?
Yes. My name's John Kelly, actually. To speak a little bit more to the surrounding exterior buffer, where possible, existing vegetation where it's already mature and works well with the proposed development, the developer will do their best to keep the existing vegetation where practical.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other presenters from the company?
Just a quick update. I did flip through the report. We do not have any match pair data from Davidson County, though we did look through Davidson County for that data.
Thank
There
you,
just
sir.
wasn't any yet, so. Thank you.
Does anyone in the audience like to speak either for or against this rezoning request? Now's the time to speak if you'd like to speak.
Well, he answered my question. Like I say,
Just state your name again,
David Massengale.
okay?
My question is, you remember growing up and you played with a toy and you left it somewhere and it got damaged and your grandma says, if you'd have put it, where it went, it wouldn't have got damaged. My only complaint, not really a complaint, I don't mind a solar farm being there. I'd rather it be that than a bunch of houses. But that's like bringing your stuff close to me, and there's a possibility something could happen. The way the weather's got lately, they've cut some timber beside of us, and man, we've had a breeze for almost 10 years. And I don't want to have to pay for something. Like right now, if a tree fell, I could go to my neighbor, look, man, a tree fell, I'm gonna cut it up and get it off your property. Yeah, go ahead. But now, I can't afford what these things cost. That was my main concern. Just me working, I work my tail off every day to try to have something. And I'm just trying to cover my behind, That's the only two questions I had.
Okay. Somebody,
For this map, I'm trying to find my place. It might have been a wasted trip up here. I mean, I don't even see my house there. Now, I've seen the surveyors come through my back line.
And that's what I was looking at. David Massengale will be lot 12B, so he was an adjoining property owner, which will be this tract right here. So actually, Mr. Massengale, even though this is a large 70-some acre tract, the solar portion of the property that's going to be used is to the south end of that. There will be no change adjoining you on this property. So
well, then have at it.
You're good with it.
I'm just trying to cover my behind,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is anyone else in the audience want to speak either in favor of or against this rezoning request? I declare the public hearing closed. Mr. Crook?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For a special use permit, the ordinance lays out where these things are supposed to be located. It defines them, and, let's see. Here we go. Pardon me. It allows for application in the zoning district in which this is located, which is I think it's RA2, and you have to meet certain criteria, which are called specific standards. The specific standards are gone over by the staff, and our office has looked at all of that, and the applicant has satisfactorily submitted evidence in the application that states owner, at the time of completion, that they can meet all the specific requirements. You take that application as a whole, and then you measure it against the 4 general standards that are in the application. And that's what it's the board's requirement or task tonight, to look at the general standards and make a decision as to whether it meets those, and vote on each one individually. That General Standard 1, the use promotes the public health, safety, general welfare if located where proposed, developed and operated according to the plans as submitted. Staff found evidence in the application and through testimony tonight that general standard can be supported, and it would be staff's opinion that it should be approved. General Standard 2 basically speaks to, do they meet all the specific standards or any other regulation that would be applicable to this project? Again, staff went through the application and the testimony submitted here tonight and would agree that General Standard number 2 can be supported if developed according to the plans as submitted. In the application, staff comment number 3 was negative, but that was because we did not have Mr. Kirkland's information about the appraisal and the maintenance of property values. The standard there is you have to do the project, you have to maintain value. You don't have to increase it, but you cannot decrease it. You have to maintain it. And hearing nothing else in the record other than Mr. Kirkland's evidence that, there's a variance there of plus or minus 10%, but in general, it's showing 0 to 5 with a positive of 1, would to me indicate maintenance of property value with these projects similarly located. General Standard 4 basically says, the ordinance says they can be applied for in RA2, they meet all the specific requirements. If they meet the general standards, then General Standard 4 should be approved, because that's the way our ordinance lays out the plans for development in Davidson County. And with 1, 2, 3, in staff's opinion, meeting the criteria, we would also recommend General Standard 4 meeting the criteria. So we would recommend approval of the application, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Has our attorney got any comments?
Mr. Chairman, unless there are specific questions from the board, it appears as if there has been sufficient evidence presented pursuant to the zoning ordinance to meet the standards that are set out in the special use requirements for a solar farm. And I know that this is a relatively new procedure for the Board of Commissioners, but Mr. Crook is absolutely right. It does make sense both from an evidentiary standpoint and a preparation and preservation of the record to have each of these standards voted on separately, and then to have a final vote with regard to the totality of the approval or denial of the special use permit. I would just suggest that, Mr. Crook, it may be appropriate for you to repeat for the board, as each of these separate standards are discussed, the question that the board is addressing.
I'll be glad to do that and read through those. And I would also like to add to the record, I had a chance to research the property and found no issues with this property. Taxes are paid, everything. It doesn't have any improvements on it. There are no buildings or anything, so there are no problems from that standpoint. Yeah, when the board's ready to entertain the four standards and then the final fifth vote for the permit in total, I'll be happy to read through these.
Before you do, let's give the board an opportunity.
I have one question, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Mr. Crook?
Yes, sir.
Just so I understand what you said on number 3.
Yes, sir.
Apparently, what I'm hearing is y'all didn't get Mr. Kirkland's report originally, so your vote was negative, or your decision was negative. But now, since you've heard his report, the staff's recommendation would be to approve number 3.
That is accurate, yes, sir.
So the only reason there was a negative there was because you didn't have his report prior to.
That is accurate, yes, sir.
Okay.
When the packets went out, we didn't have that information, and staff rightfully so. With a quasi judicial hearing, you have to base it on what's in the record, and we didn't have anything in the record where now we do.
Any other?
I
Okay.
have one comment on number 3.
Yes, sir.
I noticed it's got a time limit. If this goes through, what keeps them from 10 years down the road to say, well, we might need to put up this buffer?
With respect to the buffer specifically, special use permits have a 180-day time period before they, the special use decision can be deemed invalid. We have.
They do have a time limit.
They do, yes, sir.
It's not written.
Yes, sir. Well, it is written in the ordinance, yes, sir.
In the ordinance, but
Yes,
I'm
sir.
talking about the- okay, thank you.
And I think that we put a special condition on the South Davidson solar, decision that allowed them to have a year. Because apparently there are some difficulties in vetting these through the electrical provider for them to accept them, and there's some red tape and some stuff that the applicant and the contractors have to go through to get them to accept it.
Is there anything in here with regards to abandonment and cleanup?
That would be a question that we would need to ask
I thought we went through that last time with one of these.
That's a very pertinent point, and if you'd like to speak to that, do you have anything in place and you're Mr. Kelly or you're Mr. Kelly?
No, Mr. John
Yep.
Kelly, actually.
John Day, Blake Day, or John, okay, anyway, I apologize. Would you get up and explain to the board, if you decommission this site, what takes place, and how do we know that we're not left holding a bunch of solar panels?
I'll say that, as we go through formal permitting, there will be a decommissioning plan provided. And so there's a formal plan that will be with all the permitting that will go through in detail, the removal of that process and then getting it back to the current existing condition.
Okay. To date, have you guys decommissioned any other sites across the state?
We have not. No,
Okay.
No, sir.
Everything that how many sites have y'all developed across the state?
Across the state,
Just a ballpark.
100 sites across the state,
Okay.
ballpark, out of our Charlotte office and out of our Raleigh office. Kimley Horn as a whole have done several gigawatts across the country.
Okay.
And it's still, fairly new, so I think from when Kimley Horn has been involved with it, we haven't gotten to that 30-year decommissioning plan, but the decommissioning plan is always part of that initial permitting package.
Okay. Is that a requirement per state building code, or is that just something that you guys always include?
It's something we always include. I'm not sure if it's part of the building code. Yeah.
Okay.
But it is something that we always include, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Questions?
Does that satisfy your question?
So we have that document?
We do not.
As part of this?
We do not. It's not a specific requirement for our permitting process. We do not have it yet, according to what we've heard in testimony, that it will be supplied when they apply for. If it's approved here tonight, they have to still get technical permits through the inspections department, and the decommissioning plan will be submitted at that point in time.
Okay.
Is that satisfactory, Commissioner?
If it's not submitted, do we have the right to require it before we can approve it, permit?
I think any reasonable condition can be placed on the permit.
Condition that we're looking at tonight?
But with under 160D, the new the new, general statutes, enabling statutes for zoning, I think the conditions have to be agreed upon by both parties. And I know that if the, and please correct me, Mr. Fry, if I'm wrong, we could make it subject to, if it's the board's wish to approve it, we can make it subject to submittal and review by Mr. Fry's office of a decommissioning plan.
Would y'all be in agreement with that?
Yes.
Mr. Fry? Excuse me, Mr. Fry,
Sir.
is that suffice?
I think so. One of the things the board, has is the ability that in the event the applicant, after they've been approved for a special use permit, fails to do that which they've agreed to do, the board can revoke the special use permit. That's a very powerful tool, particularly when you're looking at the investment that this applicant is making in the property. You may recall that in the past, we've used that, I think, for an arena-type special use permit, and the applicant didn't do what they said they would do. And the board held their feet to the fire and took back the special use permit. So if the applicant agrees to it tonight, and it's listed as a condition of the granting of this special use permit, I think that's all the insurance that the board would need.
So you could include that in one of these?
It would be
at the end.
We can, yeah. If the board decides to vote to approve this request, it would be my recommendation we go through the standards, and then at the final vote at the end, since you've heard from the applicant, they agree to submit a decommissioning plan for our legal department's review. If that doesn't take place, we can start the revocation process.
Add that to it.
Yeah, so we would make that a specific condition on that final fifth vote after the standards, general standards have been gone through one by one.
You good with that, Steve?
Lee-
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Lee, other solar farms, when they've come in and come before us, they've already, I guess we are used to hearing that.
That's been discussed up front, yes, sir, in several different applications.
But that's nothing that you guys do, and
It's something that the board in the past has been comfortable in getting that evidence.
right.
There's not a specific requirement in our ordinance, and we'd be glad to look at that and make it a specific requirement to have it up front as part of this process in the future, if you want to. That would just take a text amendment. But for this application, we would probably have to proceed with it as a condition of approval at the end, and then if they don't meet that, we can
Good idea, though.
look at the revocation.
That's a good, that's a good idea.
Discussion.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We know what's in there.
that makes good sense.
This,
Sound good?
Sounds good.
thing that we'll be voting on, Chuck,
Sir.
I was just sitting here thinking that if they just have a document that says that they're gonna remove it all, but there's no time limit on that, that wouldn't be very effective. So would that be part of what we'll be doing?
I think there's going to be an expectation that there would be some clarity with regard to that.
Okay.
And that may take some discussion back and forth between the county government, our offices collectively, and the applicant. And I don't anticipate that would be a challenge.
The script.
Yes, sir.
Read number one.
Okay, all right. General standard number one, the use will promote the public health, safety, and general welfare if located where proposed, developed, and operated according to the plans as submitted.
there a
Make a
motion?
motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve number one.
There a second?
Second.
Cast your vote.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Number two, sir.
All right. General standard number two, the use, which is listed as a special use in the district in which it is proposed to be located, complies with all required regulations and standards, including the provisions of Article 4 of this ordinance, unless greater or different regulations are contained in the individual standards for the special use.
Have a motion And
Motion
a second for number 2.
Motion to approve standard 2.
Second,
Second.
cast your vote. Number 3, so,
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
sorry, number 3.
Number 3, that the use will maintain the value of contiguous property or that the use is a public necessity.
Have a motion and a second to approve number 3.
Motion to approve.
Second. Third.
Cast your vote.
All of the votes are in.
Number
And
4.
that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
General standard number 4, that the use is in compliance with the general plans for the physical development of the county as embodied in these regulations.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we would approve number 4 with the stipulation. How does that need to be worded, Mr. Fry?
We'll do that on the final.
Do that on the next
Yes,
one.
sir.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
we approve number 4 and then we,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second? Cast your vote.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Okay. As we entertain a motion and a second to either approve or deny the special use permit request, is there certain verbiage that we need to have in there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All 4 general standards have been voted positively upon, so it's appropriate at this time to grant the special use permit. What staff would ask whoever makes the motion grant it according to the plans as submitted in the application, subject to the testimony we've heard tonight, and that the submittal of a decommissioning plan be submitted for planning staff and legal staff's review. Y'all got that?
An okay will do fine.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I would, because he's able to put the verbiage there, and then we move on his motion if that's suitable to the chairman.
You mean put the
Because
verbiage
I
on
don't
there?
know that we can put
Motion
exactly
as
what-
read.
Motion as read. Yeah, we could do a motion as he read it.
Wait, I'm not, what we'll do is we'll use the motion and second to approve, the special use request contingent upon their being able to work out, decommission.
The decommissioning
Is that
plan.
satisfactory?
What Lee said.
Yes, but I believe you had 2 other conditions, Mr. Crook.
Also that it be subject to the plan as submitted in the application, site plan and the other information, as well as the testimony presented tonight in the public hearing.
For permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion, we approve Mr. Crook's verbiage.
And I'll second, or third.
Before y'all
As
do it,
read.
our attorney was gonna say
Oh,
something.
you got something? I'm sorry.
No, sir, I just wanted to make sure that we had those 3 elements that Mr. Crook has now hit upon.
So you're satisfied with it?
Yes, sir.
Motion accepted, second accepted.
Mr. Shores, yep.
Cast your vote.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentlemen.
Cook.
Thank y'all.
That concludes our public
Gentlemen.
hearing. You folks are not required to sit through the whole thing, so you're welcome to leave if you want. They got a good banana split right over there.
He can verify that. He can verify that.
Thank you.
Say
Carry you home when you go, 'cause you'll need one.
I've eaten that several times.
I was sitting there for 2 women, one was.
Man, I ain't heard half at it, and I couldn't tell you how long.
About miles got about.
Have at it.
No, what, them 2 old, sit there and eat that full banana.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
It's good to have you back, Jason.
Good to be back.
We're on the, portion of our meeting for the consent agenda. Any items to remove from the consent agenda for discussion?
Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Cast your vote.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Okay. The items for decision information or deliberation. A is presentation of updated process by Human Resources.
Excuse me, good evening. I'll try to make this as quickly as I can. You should have a packet of about 5 policies in front of you. First one should say concussion and traumatic brain or head injury, sorry. And the second one is youth protection. I'll do these both at the same time. They're brand new policies, primarily relate to parks and rec. And it is kind of how the title is involved. Head injury, it's protocol for what happens if somebody has a head injury while participating in a summer program or youth program. And it kind of outlines what we do. The other is youth protection, protecting individuals under the age of 18 from harassment or any other kind of event that might occur. And it also does explain towards the second page on the first page on the back, what we would use as qualifications for not hiring somebody. So felony convictions within the last 15 years, misdemeanor convictions in the last 5, kind of goes on. So, and also I would ask that if we can approve these policies tonight to be effective tomorrow, that would be great.
Any questions from the board?
So those are the first 2. Quickly, the last couple, position reclassification has not changed. It is still, if some position is reclassified up, goes to the minimum of the pay grade or 5%, whichever is greater. If it goes down, the employee's salary is not changed. I did add the last paragraph, which is essentially a procedure.
I have a question right there, Tony. So does a director have discretion in that? Meaning, could they only give 2.5%?
It does say up to 5%, so I would say yes, but that rarely ever happens. And it has to go through me and Casey before it's approved. And it would typically be 5% unless there's some mitigating circumstances for it not to be.
Okay.
But, I'm sorry, for Commissioner Shore's point, though, the buck stops at the county manager, right?
Well, in the past, and I know why he's asking that, I mean, there was discretion because you didn't have any funds available. You guys remember last summer, we changed the way we do our pay stuff now with our calculations. So it was gonna come to us, we're gonna see it, and I'm gonna do what the policy says, either to the minimum or up to 5.
And they'll have to complete a salary calculation sheet, which what we've implemented, and it will automatically go to the minimum or 5%, whichever's higher. It'll do that math automatically. So the director would have to come back and make that change and explain why they're making that change.
Gotcha.
I only ask that because, if we're trying to stay away from the compression.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we have and I know in the past it has been done, but it's like Casey said, they didn't have as much discretion and so forth.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure that we stay as far away from
No, that's a great point in the compression, and Casey and I talked a little bit about that. And we may wind up in 6 months to a year from now needing to change this policy to do it a little bit more like we do promotions. Where promotions, we keep somebody, if you're 10% in a pay grade 3, if you're 10% above the minimum and you're going to a pay grade 4, we would keep you 10% above the minimum of the pay grade 4, so that you keep in the structure the same. We're going to try this for now, see how it works, but we may come back at a later date to change it.
The downside to that is not just at the moment you're looking at the one individual, you're keeping 10, let's just use 10%, it's fine. But what if you start doing more pay studies and you evaluate an entire pay class? Then you're talking about a big check. So I got to think through that one just a little bit, how to do it. I'm good with the 0 minimum to 5 for now. Do I think of something better?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Question on youth protection.
Sure.
The reason for denial, felony conviction within the last 15 years, what about expungements? How do you handle those?
If it's been expunged, it won't come to us. We won't get it. I'm sorry?
So you would still hire a person?
Yeah, if it's been expunged, legally expunged from somebody's record, we will not know it when we do the background check. We just won't.
That's good for the kids, I reckon.
Huh?
That's good for the children. That people put their trust in us to protect. So it's all about that person, it's not about these kids at all then, right?
Hello?
I'm not saying it's your fault.
I was gonna say, we're following the law.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying that something.
Yeah, if somebody
enact laws without giving any thought.
Yeah, if somebody has a conviction, a felony conviction expunged, we won't know it, and we hire them, we won't know it unless something happens.
Sadly, that's done every day.
Yeah. And partly why we need these.
Hadn't been until a couple of years ago.
True.
Well, and partly why we need these two policies is from a liability perspective. Right now, we don't have anything, and so, by having something in place, we then, with our carrier liability insurance, would help prevent, or at least cover the costs of maybe something like that happening. I mean, it doesn't help the child that it affects, but. Okay.
One of the things we've had issues with in the past was whenever a child grows faster than his peers and he exceeds a weight limit for a particular age, we get a lot of pressure to let that person compete by his age, and he is far superior in physical attributes. So I know we have fought that 2 or 3 times where the parents knew that maybe there should be something in there that the weight classes or the...
That's really a qualification within, so that would be the Parks Department should manage and regulate that versus an HR policy. I mean, we're really...
It comes before this board.
I'm sorry?
I say it will come before this board.
Sure.
It has in the past.
Sure.
And what I was saying is if you had that in the agreement, that the people could sign, then that would have...
Absolutely agree, and that's really a Parks and Rec question. I mean, that would be, we won't create that agreement. Thomas will do that, and so, absolutely agree. If a child is above the weight limit for participating in something or physical size, they should be moved to the next level.
Mr. Chairman, I have an opportunity. This is called the youth protection, but it could be easily called molestation and abuse policy. That's what it's normally called, and it's to keep us from making sure that people who aren't qualified they're not going to sexually abuse or be mistrusted with our children.
Correct.
So, and it's one thing that's required.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
I got you.
Yeah. And then the voluntary shared leave, the only change we made in that, it was written in the policy that an employee had to be employed for a year before they could participate in the shared leave. We moved that to at time of hire because that is when they can use their sick leave. Right. So it only made sense to allow people to use if they were able to get donated leave if there was some kind of a medical issue that required them to be away from work. The next policy, which is the Environmental Health Initiative, we are asking that the same date of May 9th be maintained. We inadvertently took out the incentive for the administrative staff, 10% bonus, when this was approved back in May. It was inadvertently taken out for the admin staff. And so we just wanted to add it back in.
So with 2 different dates, do we need to have 2 different motions? You wanted everything to start tonight, right?
Well, this policy, which has the original date of 5/9, which is when it would remain in effect.
Okay.
Yeah, the policy.
Keeping track of it, there hasn't been that first quarterly payout yet. Remember when we removed it from the food and lodging, it got removed here, so I don't.
Right, it would set
I think
it
they're
back
still in
to
their process of getting ready for their first quarter run. This just makes it solidified. that you guys approved it and didn't knock it out.
Yeah.
I have a question for Chuck.
Sir.
I'm beating a dead horse, I know, but I think we need to consider this.
Yes.
If I have a conviction for a felony and I get it expunged and I apply to Davidson County, do I fail to disclose a criminal conviction? Do I have to report that? I know what the answer's gonna be, but how ridiculous is that? When we're in charge of the safety of these kids. That's why this country's getting to the point where it's at. There's no consequences, just remove it, you're not gonna be charged with anything, it's ridiculous. And we're not paying attention to the people we're, sworn to protect.
The thing about it is,
So what's the answer to that?
you're not gonna know it.
It don't say a thing in there about expungement. It says if
No,
I've
and
been
the only-
convicted.
It's not on your record anymore.
I
The
know
only
that,
legally
but
way
I
we
was
can-
convicted.
The only legally way we
The
can,
question reads what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that came basically when the sheriff was,
The only-
ex-sheriff was gonna run and he had his record expunged. You're not allowed to look at it at all.
Mr. Deal, do you use a third party to do background checks?
yes, we do.
See, it's out of our hands.
Well, and the only way we can ask that legally is if you have a criminal conviction, a felony that has not been expunged.
Correct.
So that's the only way we can legally.
But I
ask
agree
that.
with Commissioner Shell, that's terrible.
That's what I was suggesting.
Yeah.
It's not in there, that question.
It's on our application.
But it's not in the policy, and that's what we're voting on. We're not voting on your application. We're voting on this policy right here, and it's not in there. Expungement's not in there, so the liability falls back on us if we happen to give the okay to hire somebody and they molest a child out here.
But if
It's putting a burden on this board.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I'm not sure exactly what you would want me to add to the policy.
The expungement part, from which no expungement has been taken.
But that would show up on a criminal record that we
Yeah.
would get. So it doesn't matter whether we have it in the policy or not. We run a criminal record background check for the entirety of that person's.
That's too simplified. If that's, you comfortable with that, go ahead with it.
I've done that for 30 years,
Well,
and I've not ever had a
I've dealt
problem.
with the personnel for over
I
50
understand
years.
that. I understand that.
So don't, you can't tell me about that. I've hired people and fired people in the private sector. So don't hand me that junk. It's not in there, and it puts the burden on this board, whether they realize it or not.
I'm happy to add a section. I'm not,
Add to the,
Yeah, I'd like to add that, if we could just add that verbiage.
I think we need to be adding something that'll confuse what we've got. That's
You're
asking
comfortable with it, Chairman, go ahead and make the motion, and I'll go along with it if that's what you want, but I don't agree with it.
It's not what I want at all, it's what's necessary.
Yes, sir.
So, I'm not understanding, it's 5 years for a misdemeanor conviction, and 15 for a felony, is that correct?
yeah, whatever I have in the policy.
I think
Yeah.
the 5 years for a misdemeanor is extremely problematic, because an 18-year-old kid has got a conviction for 15 over the speed limit, that's a misdemeanor conviction.
Wow.
I don't have a
If he goes
problem with
3
that.
years and decides to come to work for Davidson County, that's gonna haul him, it's gonna follow him the rest
I
of his
don't
life.
have a problem with that whatsoever, it's not what I said.
No, I'm not.
It's not in the writing, that's what I'm saying.
No, it's not about what you said, Commissioner Shaw, I'm just, my concern is, I think we cut ourselves short on potential applicants if we put that in place as far as 5 years for a misdemeanor conviction, because misdemeanors are so broad. It could be a 16-mile-an-hour speeding ticket, and then you can't get a job today.
From a legal perspective, it has to be related to the job.
Well, the follow-up was on felony convictions, not misdemeanor.
Right, I was just
That
concerned
wasn't
about.
a matter of discussion.
They all have to be related to the job.
Okay, but-
So speeding, unless they're driving a county vehicle.
Right, what I heard wasn't
Yeah,
specific to that, that
yeah,
was my only concern, I
yeah.
apologize.
Tony, you had mentioned about the expungement piece being asked for on the application.
Yeah.
Is that something we can include here? Or is it?
You can't put something in there, say that if they have had anything expunged, because you're not allowed by law to ask them that. You're
I got
allowed.
that, but what have we asked on the application?
I mean, the only thing that we're able to ask is whether or not you've been convicted of a felony that has not been expunged.
That's not what, that was my point. That's not what the question asked.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't mention expungement.
I think he wants the wording, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Shell. I think he wants the wording of the policy to reflect what we actually do.
That's absolutely fine. I can add that. I can add the verbiage of whether or not it's been expunged or not.
To entice them to say, hey, I've had this expunged, well,
Yeah, I mean, it right there is just, it's just not there, you know?
Yeah, no,
I feel.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make it more complicated than it.
No,
You're not.
I think I was missing my point, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, if
think I
you're-
was missing my point. What my concern was is failure to disclose a criminal conviction on the application. I had one, but I had it expunged. That's not true, y'all, but I mean, that could have very well been, you know?
Sure.
And then something bad happens and you said, well, you didn't even ask him if he'd been convicted for a conviction where there was no expungement. You didn't even ask him that.
Yeah, so I can certainly add for the felony conviction is what you're,
felony.
whether or not it
Misdemeanor is
was,
not-
in the last 15 years, whether or not it was expunged.
and I'm gonna tell you, I feel sorry for Tony Deal because this is like an insurance template that we get.
Yeah, it
So
really
that
is.
covers us
Yeah.
for our insurance plan, and they write the verbiage out, so we're covered legally, so,
But I wanna make sure we understand everybody's on the same page. Under this criminal background check section, where you're correct, it doesn't say anything about expungement. So we would just simply add something referencing this policy mirrors what we already do with the application.
Right, for the felony convictions,
yeah.
I can put in there whether or not you've been convicted of a felony,
Yeah.
that's been expunged or not. So if you would approve it based on that.
Well, his answer would be no. If it'd been expunged, he don't have to go into details, just say no, I have not been.
And that's what they do on the application. They say no, and we move on, and if we do a background check, it won't show up in the background check. Not if, but when we do one.
well, in that case, can I make a motion for approval, Mr. Chairman?
You wanna wait for a minute? If you
Yeah.
don't mind. Chuck,
Sir.
the whole deal with expungement is to remove the, felony or misdemeanor or whatever. The only thing you can't is, in my learning, is a DUI. You can't expunge a DUI. I don't know why that is. You can kill somebody and get it expunged.
That's
But if the whole purpose of getting the expungement is to remove that, from the record, so it won't affect his job or his family or his anything, then can we come back and ask them, have you had anything expunged, and expect that person to say that he has, because it's already gone?
I'm gonna answer your question, but I wanna circle a little bit before I do.
Well,
Because
we circled enough, go ahead.
I heard the concern that Mr. Shell said there, and
That's a pretty big hill, you better
and
watch
I
out.
certainly appreciate and am concerned about that same element. I'm not sure that we really need to focus on felonies or misdemeanors here, perhaps as much as we need to focus on the child abuse or conviction against the welfare of a juvenile. I don't know that we're really looking at, and I'm looking for some direction, I think, Mr. Shell, from you, because what I heard, and maybe I didn't hear it all.
Well, I like your point there. Be specific as to what could happen to our youth. I like that point.
And so, rather than, I'm looking at page 2 of 5 of the youth protection document here, and under disqualifications, I'm not sure we're really talking about those first several bullet points there as much as we are the elements that speak down, child abuse, welfare of a child, sex or sexual misconduct convictions. And perhaps I think it would be more relevant to the protection of youth if we were just to focus on those elements. And I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, what you're saying about expunction. Expunction has the legal expectation that that is going to be wiped clean, and it's not something that will be brought up again. But I would rather be in a position of trying to defend a policy if it spoke specifically to youth-specific concerns in a youth protection policy.
I agree.
Could that open some challenge
That narrows it down.
Could
Amen.
that open some challenge to our policy? Yes, but I'm not sure we wouldn't want to be in a position of saying, okay, sue us on that.
That's right.
The only thing, and I'll let it rest.
Yes, sir.
The only thing is if it has his record has been expunged.
Right.
Then you have no standing to ask him if it's been expunged, because when he had it expunged, that erases it, and you're not supposed to bring it up again.
I agree. That's the whole purpose of expunction, and that's what the court has to look at. I'm sitting here thinking also that I don't know that I've ever seen
Boys, we better get out of here.
these types of offenses
Look at the size of that hill.
being expunged.
Oh,
That's golf ball size.
Todd's
hail.
got that Corvette undersong.
Hey, that's big hail, y'all. This is huge hail.
Hey, golf ball size. Look at that, James. Look at this
Puts us in
window.
a quagmire, really. Because we're
That ain't good,
responsible
man.
for making sure we hire people in youth sports for all that. But then it's telling us, but you can't ask whether or not they're abused children.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if at this point, the board might not be more comfortable considering these other proposals and letting the director in my office consider this one about youth protection and bring it back to you, the board.
I would agree with that.
You got that motion second? Debbie?
Second, this ain't.
I'm sorry, who made the motion? Having trouble hearing.
Any other discussion? Hopefully not.
I'll make a
Yes, sir.
motion that we approve
I think
everything.
we just did, but that's all
I
right.
didn't
Go
hear a
ahead.
motion,
Go ahead.
but, no. Did somebody make a
It
motion?
was thundering outside. Just go ahead.
This ain't thunder.
Who made a motion?
No, it's huge.
You wanna make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve everything with the exception of the youth protection.
Is that what?
That would be my suggestion.
The last,
Second.
next to the last two bullet points, right?
No, sir, I'm suggesting.
the whole piece,
That
right.
this whole
We'll bring
youth
youth
protection
protection
policy
back. Okay.
be removed, and that the board would consider the other policies that Mr.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Dill had submitted.
I just
May
think we,
I ask a question?
Surely.
Mr. McCoy? Mr. Deal, you had asked for this to be voted on in its entirety tonight, correct?
Correct.
Is that because you're concerned about Parks and Recreation or anything else dealing with youth in the near future?
Two reasons,
Okay.
yes. The answer to that question is yes, and if it's a verbiage issue, the other is, as Commissioner Elliott mentioned, it is verbiage from the insurance company. We will be rated differently for our renewal, and we will not be protected financially if something happens if we don't pass this policy.
When is that renewal, sir?
July 1st.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the they already telling us what kind of health
Oh,
care we
absolutely.
get.
I'm just telling you what they
I'd like
tell
to
me.
see that
We
where
will
they
get a
told us
rider,
that.
we will get a rider that says if something happens, because that policy's not in place. Just telling you what they told me. Doesn't mean we need to pass it, We've been operating without it for.
Yeah, that's what,
I don't think he's asking to eliminate the, policy. I think what he's asking is to keep the policy as it is and add to that.
I'm absolutely fine doing that.
I don't
I
see
can
why
add
we
whatever
can't
you would
pass
like
the
me to add.
policy with the
If you
correct
want-
wording that Commissioner Shell wants.
The
and it
insurance
being done.
company won't necessarily accept it. That's the problem.
No, the problem is
I don't
us
think they
allowing
will
the insurance
care.
companies to
I
get
mean,
to that point.
If we put something in there that says
And that's
whether
the
or not
truth.
it's been expunged, I don't think the insurance company's gonna care about that particular verbiage.
Yeah.
They're just gonna care whether we have it all in place.
That's right.
And I don't mean us, the board, Mr. Chairman, I'm talking about the people of this
I understand.
country.
Yeah.
But Tony, if we bring it back by the 13th, is there a time frame here?
July 1st is when our renewal takes effect. Sorry.
So we need to really get
They've
it
told
out.
us factually they will not
Correct.
give us rider unless we put what they want us to put in.
No,
this
no,
thing.
not what they want, but that we have something in place.
Well, I think it's what we're trying to do, so it's just that you and Chuck need to look at that one and see if there's any way
I'm
to
fine
fix
with
it.
that. I'm not,
I know when I was in the rescue squad and the insurance companies for the rescue squads would do the same thing. But they would also, as long as you was working on something, they would give you an extension. So I think that as long as they know you in the legal department, maybe it works differently, I don't know.
What they will do is if they will not give us a rider, and then once we pass it, then we can go back to them and say, we have it. Will you then cover us if something happens?
Okay.
Whether they accept that or not, I don't.
Which will just be
I'm confident that Mr. Fry can come up with
12
something
days later, you know.
Let
like
me
2
ask
weeks
you
later.
this real quick, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
What if we just get this, approve this, with the elimination of that one sentence? Why does that have to be in there? If it has no meaning, if expungement has no meaning, no recall, why do we even need that sentence?
Forgive me, sir, I'm not, what's that?
To me,
Which sentence?
under youth protection, failure to disclose a criminal conviction.
3 of 5.
Why do we
Mr. Fry.
even need that if we're not going to recognize it?
Commissioner Shell, which bullet?
3 of 5 at the top.
The reason we need that is if they fail to disclose one and we get it on the background check, then we would move to terminate them immediately.
I understand what you're saying, Tony. I really do. I just don't think it's fair to treat one individual who can afford to have an expungement different than one who can't.
Commissioner Shell, help me one more time. Which sentence are we talking about?
Well, he made that pretty, and once I read it, he's right. He's right. It's just frustrating.
I understand that, but whether or not and you got a good point. If someone can afford to have it expunged, it'll be expunged. And if somebody can't, it won't be.
I mean, that person don't count.
But, right. I absolutely understand that and agree with that.
I share your concern.
Is there,
What if we just approve it the way it lies?
We have a motion and a second on
There is, I think that.
Wasn't making the motion.
It's all, I think he's done it, right?
Well, it doesn't make any difference. I haven't called for a vote, so we're still having a discussion.
But don't we have to vote on the motion
No,
and
you
seconds
don't.
on the floor?
No.
I think we do, don't we?
Mr. Fry, can we get a point of order there?
I believe that the chairman at this point is opened the matter up for discussion. That there is a motion and a second, and at this time, until he, rules that the discussion has been closed, there is not a closure on that at this point.
When he closes, do we vote on the motion and second on the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless that motion were to be withdrawn or somehow amended.
If it was amended, you'd vote on the amendment first and then the motion.
Gotcha.
Yes.
There's a book back there that got all that laid out.
Roberts.
It's not Robert, it's ours.
Really?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Chuck again what his point was that I liked while ago? I forgot through all this.
Is there a time problem on this? You said July 1st?
Correct.
Is there a time limit that we have to have something voted on by July 1st?
correct.
Okay. We can't do that if we don't vote on it today. Now, we can amend that anytime after we vote on it.
Absolutely. If
Or
there's
we
an
just approve it
amendment,
and then
if there's
amend it if we want.
language that you would like for us to add into it, I'm happy to do that.
But that's what I heard, that it had to be done today.
Can we make if the commissioner wants to amend his motion, can he make the motion and amend it to have, Chuck and Mr. Commissioner Shell involved on the wording with Tony? And then we can approve all of it in a package and seeing that all that's done, can we do it that way?
I think they're saying that they want it approved tonight.
I mean, but we can approve it with the caveat that.
Amended.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
But I like what Chuck said a while ago. I don't really think he needs me, Chris, but because I like what he said, and I think he was on point. I think he sees the concern.
Go ahead, sorry. He's up here amending it now.
I was trying to.
Before we lose it.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, And Tony, I don't know if this would be satisfactory or not, but, Mr. Shell, I was looking at the bullet points on page 2 of 5, and, if we look down at the bullet points, number, what I'm calling 5, 6, and 7, any child abuse or domestic violence convictions, any conviction against the welfare of a juvenile, any sex or sexual misconduct convictions. I think those specifically address the concerns that you have and started the conversation here. And I'm wondering if, regard to each of those bullet points, 5, 6, and 7, if we were to add, or expunction of such conviction.
That'd be great. That would.
And just to add that as a tag at the end of each of those.
Yeah, I would be satisfied with that.
And I regret
I'm not satisfied with the expungements, period, but under certain circumstances I am, but not just wrong-based expungements.
I regret not getting that before the board sooner, but that may address the concern and also allow us to move forward.
But also, I guess
Goodness gracious.
I guess it addresses the insurance piece, because you're not asking for it, the person will voluntarily tell you.
I don't have a problem if y'all wanna, if that's a motion, I think that was made, and the second, was that the same thing? That's what we've been talking about?
Mr. Chairman, I would amend my motion to the verbiage that Mr. Fry spoke of, and approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying.
Does the clickers work, David?
You okay?
I'm fine.
The TVs aren't working, but I think we're good on this.
I guess I would ask one, but if it's expunged, just so everybody knows, if it's expunged, we will not know that.
I know it.
We don't get a criminal background check that says
It's
sex
fine.
offense, that this was.
And that's what I just asked Chuck. Basically, what you're saying is the person wants to voluntarily tell you they're expunged,
Yeah.
you can disqualify
Yeah,
them
that's
that
all
way.
we would, if they
That's fine.
voluntarily.
That gets it in both places, the
Yeah.
policy, but in reality, Tony's right, you don't, the person tells you that, then.
We've done our due diligence.
Tony, I know that, and I agree with you on that.
Just so that you really know that.
But if we don't make it look as if we have asked or we have acknowledged expungements,
Absolutely in
then
agreement.
I think it opens us up down the road.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Expungement didn't come into my head when
Yeah,
I wrote it.
I know.
So.
I don't think the insurance company will be bothered by that.
They will not care.
I
They
don't
will
think
not
it'll,
care.
I don't think it'll ever come up.
No, it won't. It won't. Because we're not gonna send it to them. We're just gonna tell them that
But if
the
the guy was
commissioners
like-
approved it.
Sheriff Hagee, whenever he came in, he knew every dot, every cross T, everything on there about expungement. And if
Yeah.
you asked him about the expungement, he'd call you on it.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Because if it's not there, you can't ask him if it's
Yeah,
there.
you won't know it, yeah. I'm
But
absolutely
anyway, we
fine
got a
with that.
motion and a second.
We've
And-
done
already
and all
voted.
of the votes are in, and that passes by a vote, a vote of 5-0.
Good job.
I hate to be a pain in the butt, people, but
No, I
I
think
got
it
principles that
ultimately-
the good Lord has told me to follow up on, and I.
ultimately,
and I
it
do,
comes
and I
out
think
as a better policy,
May
so
not
I'm
be right.
okay with that.
Keep
Listen,
my own vision.
you're a good man for
That's
that.
the way I feel.
We got one more, right?
I hate to be that way
We've got several more.
sometimes.
We better hurry up before this tornado hits now.
Oh, we got.
Yeah, we got a bunch more
Man, I
stuff.
thought
to
we
go
were
over.
ready to go.
Yeah. I ain't never seen hell that big.
Oh, yeah.
Not here.
I mean,
That's
go
scary.
Look at that silver bullet down there. Probably got a dent in it like
Mr.
that.
Fry,
Mr. Chairman, the next matter for consideration by the board, deals with a rail project at Nucor. We have to go back a little bit. It was April of last year in which Nucor and Davidson County entered into an NCRR Invest term sheet, which was contingent upon the company choosing North Carolina as the location for their facility, and of course they have. The first document that is before you tonight is entitled A Definitive Project Investment Agreement. And basically what it says is Nucor is going to invest $3.7 million in constructing a rail spur into their facility. They have reached a separate agreement with North Carolina Railroad Company by which North Carolina Railroad will provide $750,000 as an incentive to Nucor for constructing here. Our agreement basically provides for that money to pour through the county, and that money is available to Nucor contingent upon their meeting certain requirements. And these are requirements that are familiar to the board with most of our economic development incentives. On page 4 of the document, they have to create a minimum of 162 new full-time jobs. The thing that really jumps off the page at you is that these jobs have to be at an average annual wage of a minimum average annual wage of $89,694. They have to invest a minimum of $279 million, and they have to begin active rail use by August 7, 2025. All good things. Now, on page 5 of this agreement, it sets out, however, that there's a clawback, that in the event they fail to meet those requirements, that North Carolina Railroad can then require the county, if determined by North Carolina Railroad in North Carolina Railroad's sole discretion, to reimburse NCRR for those monies which had been previously dispersed. That document, the first document, was presented to us last December, and you may recall we had some concerns about that. So then we moved to the second document. And the second document is a document that I drafted in conjunction with counsel for Nucor, and it's entitled Indemnity Agreement between Davidson County and Nucor Corporation. And what this does in a nutshell is, in the event the county should ever have to pay any monies back for this rail development, then we have the right to recover those monies from Nucor. Nucor has to pay us if we ever have to pay anything to North Carolina Railroad. I feel that this is an adequate response to that. It's one of the few situations where we've had an indemnity agreement in a grant like this. And I think the board was wise at that point in recognizing some potential exposure. It would be my recommendation today that that the board would approve both of these documents.
Thank you. Y'all understand the documents?
There's not a compliance there? In other words, we are giving the money to Nucor along the way, or do we wait till they're in full compliance per their deal with the railroad before we give the $750?
The monies are actually spent as they're constructing. Okay. Then they make draws on that, and we have the right to make sure that they are making those efforts towards construction, and we can require they submit invoices to us for that.
Everybody understand it? Any questions? Motion second to approve both.
I make a motion that we approve both of these
Second.
documents for Nucor.
Any discussion? Cast your vote.
All of the votes are in, and that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
That's what fell outside. I wonder if somebody killed.
You announce it.
Yes, sir. The motion carried by a vote of 5-0. I'm sorry.
All right. North Carolina Grant Agreement and Budget Amendment. Mr. Martin.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'll be very brief with this. You all will probably recall back in March of last year, we brought forward 2 resolutions for the NC Great Grant, where the county had agreed to put up a match for 2 private companies that were applying for that grant from the state. One was Yadtel Cirrus and the other was Charter Spectrum, and that was to provide high-speed internet south of Denton and north of 49. And I believe it was about 300 to 330 passes is what they called it, or houses there, that would benefit from that. It was identified as an area with not a lot of high-speed internet, so this will provide greater access to that through fiber optic there. The state has awarded that grant now to Charter Communications or Spectrum to do that, and it's about a $1.6 million project, and our portion of that was $10,000 that we agreed to contribute with ARP revenue replacement funds to them. So this is now bringing forward the agreement which was attached, which it's a very long agreement, but our part of it is simply to say that we will pay the $10,000 to them, and we'll do it at the end of the project upon completion. At that point, they'll get the $10,000. So that requires a budget amendment, and you'll see on the second page of the item, I'll walk through the budget amendment as quickly as I can. You'll recall also, because there's a couple things that are related but not completely related here. At the June 1st meeting, we brought forward the revenue replacement budget amendment where we were rolling salaries for the current fiscal year, salaries and benefits onto that, and reducing the ad valorem tax revenue and replacing it with that revenue replacement fund. So at the end of the fiscal year, that then will drop to our fund balance and can be allocated to capital projects, anything like that. So part of that amendment is to kind of clean that up, because we have to show that this was revenue replacement funds for the $10,000. That changes the whole scoring pattern for it, and it could end up making that whole grant project go away, which would be a shame for Denton for sure. So that would be, and this amends that to go ahead and appropriate that ARP funds and to establish a project that would be an account number as established by the finance director. So we'll have a separate project for that, because this is going to carry forward potentially a couple of years before we actually pay out that $10,000. And then also the last piece of this budget amendment at the bottom, so there's three separate budget amendments there. The last one is to appropriate the interest that was earned on the ARP funds. So we're asking to appropriate that revenue and also to establish that, to transfer that over to the capital improvement fund. It's $923,845 in interest that's been earned, so that would get transferred over there as well. So I hope that made sense. If not, I'll be glad to take any questions.
You have any questions?
No, sir.
Everybody understand?
It's a lot of moving parts.
Mr. Chairman,
Motion made and second.
Motion to approve the great grant agreement and budget amendment. Is that what you need?
Yes, sir.
Amen. That's a good thing for the southern end of the county.
Yes, you vote.
For a minimal cost.
All of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Resolution authorizing joining and incorporating the Yadkin PD Water Management Group.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'll be very brief on this one as well. Since 2016, the county has participated in the Yadkin PD Water Management Group. Just as a quick reminder, this is something that every year we pay $5,000 to be a part of that group. And they do drought response planning, a lot of things with the drinking water supply, water needs, and water resource planning for the county. There's two groups that are a member of that in Davidson County. Davidson County government is a member, as is Davidson Water. They're a member there as well. So in essence, we have two votes in the group. Over about the past year and a half, they have been looking to incorporate and establish a nonprofit between all the local governments as part of this group. And they have moved forward with that. Up until this point, the city of Winston-Salem had been handling the funds, all the money that was paid into the group. They handled the budget and everything for it. This would now have them as a freestanding group. It gives them better chances to get grants, has more access to other funding, federal and state funding. And so the group in general feels that this is a good thing to move forward with. And as part of the restructuring of this, our dues will go down. They get cut in half to $2,500 a year. So what we're asking for is adoption of the resolution that's attached, recommending moving forward with joining the group, staying a part of the group, and supporting the incorporation.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Shell may remember why we got involved with this group. I don't think the rest of you were here at that time. We got involved because the state was basically going to take water from, the Catawba Basin, or from the High Rock Basin area and divert it.
That's right.
And the commissioner sent Chuck and I to a big public hearing for DEQ, and we decided then we needed a group, and a group formed, and we decided we needed to sit at the table to know what kind of water issues were coming our way. So that's how we got here. I just wanted y'all to know.
That's been beneficial.
It is. Ron's on the board. I mean, Davidson Water's on the board, and again, I'm glad to hear that the fees go down.
No brainer.
But it's,
For
us,
question, by the way.
Oh, yeah, Ron Sink's on the board.
At the time, we didn't have a clue how much water they were taking. You know, we didn't know anything about this. So, this is a way to get a heads up on these things.
You understand, I need a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve the resolution.
Second. Cast your vote. Golden Leaf Community-Based Grants Initiative.
All of the votes are in, and that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's the time, we talked about this in March, actually a few meetings ago at one of the morning meetings. It's time to begin at least the prelim process for submitting projects to Golden Leaf in their community-based grants initiative programs. Let me remind you, $11 million is available in this program and $1.5 million for the county. I've got 3 projects listed in your agenda packet there on page 2 of that, so you can see. And where we are in the process basically is pregame. Staff's asking for approval to this at this meeting here to go ahead and submit these 3 projects. We will do so, I guess, next week, and then Tim and I will await Golden Leaf will come visit with us to talk about these 3 projects a little bit more in depth, to tell us, you know, whether this project here has no chance at all, because remember the priorities: jobs, investments, agriculture, and workforce preparedness. You know, so you can see the 3 projects. One's from the college to kind of add on to that burn building. They got money from the state. I think they want to do some type of expansion on that project. Ours could easily be the $1.5 million that's available for the county because, as you all know, you know, in trying to expand sewer to Thomasville, there will be some lift stations involved. Both, if not one, could easily be the $1.5 million. And then Davidson Medical Ministries submitted one as well for the DC Connect. It's part of a program linking individuals in crisis with a person to walk alongside them along their journey. So there's estimated costs for those projects. Again, they exceed the 1.5. So I don't know what Golden Leaf will have to say about that. What I'm asking for approval is to go ahead and submit these 3 and have my prelim meetings with Golden Leaf. Now, I will say this out loud. If it gets to the point in the process where they ask me what's our number 1 priority, for me, staff's recommendation is number 1, the pump station at the Thomasville project.
Gotcha.
So if I end up having to select, and I'm asking for verbal consent here tonight, if I end up having to get pressed to select a project as number 1 priority,
Absolutely.
that will be the number 1 priority project. But right now, I don't know if that's what they're going to ask me, so I'm asking to submit all 3.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Please? I know the funds were denied, but Chairman's recommendation with regards to the homeless shelter, could that not be one of the added projects to that? I'm not so sure that would override the other. I understand what you're saying about the sewer, but I think that maybe that.
I'll talk to them. You know, Sandy didn't submit that, obviously, with this, as you can see from she just submitted funding to operate a program for DC Connect. And again, with it, the criterion with Golden Leaf, it's always been jobs and investments number 1. So anything related to doing that, which a pump station providing sewer is going to be economic development. So I have a feeling, if you remember, we got one of these grants for our business park back in 2016, and it was for a pump station. It was the big Belmont Road pump station. That's how we bought it. So I have a feeling that project's going to go to the top of the list immediately, but I will certainly talk to them about that and see where I don't know how the homeless part fits in with their criteria, but I will have that conversation.
I think, what was that you were looking at, Fred, down there, that was, that we couldn't use opiate money for, that was a homeless shelter?
Homeless shelter. We couldn't combine opiate money with, home shelter money.
Yeah.
I will breach that subject with them, Commissioner Shale. I'll talk to them.
Not sure, I'm not saying one's
Right,
superior
I
to
understand.
the other, I just think it might be a consideration, might wanna look at it.
Right.
How do I amend my motion for approval? Just say with your addition to check on the homeless shelter funding, if that could be on it, or?
Approval of
If we can have approval to submit these three, and I'll do that implicitly, so that's fine.
I'd like to make a motion approved of what Mr. Shell and Mr. Smith talked about, that, this would be approved.
Second.
And that's from the Golden Leaf money.
Yes, sir.
Cast your vote. Next one is SCIF grant.
Hold on just a second. Commissioner Watford, could I get your vote? Sure. It didn't come through.
Who?
Commissioner Watford. Got it. Okay, all of the votes are in. And that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, and again, I'll be very brief. It's 2 for 2. I'm gonna try to go 3 for 3 tonight. You do have in front of you an add-on for tonight's meeting. This is very simple. It's a grant extension agreement, for the State Capital Infrastructure Fund grant, or SCIF grant, as they call it. It was for $500,000, and the scope of work for this project was approved, I believe it was back in 2021, or may have been in early 2022. And it was identified to go towards the potential renovations at Lexington High School. This is simply an extension of that project. Initially, it was awarded in 2021. It was set to end at June 30th, 2023. The state is extending that to June 30th of 2028 now. So that gives us another 5 years on this. So.
Is that the one that Thomasville's filed for also?
No, that's a different grant.
Different grant.
Yeah.
No, different grant. This is the one where Jarvis gave us the state gave us funds for outside agencies, and we used them around, switched them around. If it's for the high school, ask Christy to put it toward the middle school if she hadn't already made a separate project out of that.
Okay.
It's getting in the details of it, because we're in the process of evaluating that one now, so, but that's where it come from. That's where these funds come from.
And we may need to, if we do that, also, we may need to come back with an amended scope of work, but that's not a problem. We can do an amendment to a scope anytime. So, they just ask us to give them a scope up front with a project to put it towards. But if that changes, they're not gonna hold us to it.
May I ask a question about that?
Sure.
You said, change it to the middle school or add the middle school?
Well, that's why I want Jason to check with Christy. I think when we started this, we made a project code. This is more for technicals on our books for Lexington High School, middle school renovations. The two projects are becoming separate projects.
Right.
So I want him to make sure this 500 is put to the middle school project, because that's the one we're working with Danny Dorman now to do.
Okay.
I don't want it sitting in a high school project that's,
No,
we'll be talking about at some point in time down the road.
down the road.
Right.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
We didn't vote on this last one.
We didn't.
Approve the extension.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the extension.
I'll second it.
We had, you asked a question.
It's because I asked a question and I interrupted, I'm sorry.
All of the votes are in, and that motion carries by a vote of 5-0.
Motion adjourned?
Second.